I guess this is day 2 of my video diary, although I'm not doing a video every day for obvious reasons. I would run out of steam far too quickly. My first video prompted quite a lively exchange on the topic of dilemmas, and in particular the dilemma that I posed between the idea of a universe that ultimately has a purpose, that is either created for a purpose or is purposeful in some broader sense, and a universe that has no purpose, that's just a given fact. And I gave briefly my reasons for disliking both alternatives. And just as a little kind of a footnote to that, there's a wonderful song by Lieber and Stoller called Is That All There Is? And if you look it up on YouTube, there's actually a video clip from the movie The Nines, which gives a really beautiful rendition of the song. And the chorus goes, "Is that all there is? Is that all there is? If that's all there is, my friend, then let's keep dancing. Let's bring on the booze and have a ball, if that's all there is." And the song makes the case for hedonism, and it basically, in a series of brilliant vignettes, illustrates the way we feel when we are disappointed at something we expect to be absolutely fantastic and wonderful, and we realise, is that all there is to love, or whatever. But it doesn't matter how brilliant and how wonderful the punchline is, what this is all really about, whatever it is, you're going to be disappointed. If that's really all, if that's all there is to the universe, God's plan for man, or whatever, once you really understand it and grasp it, you can only be disappointed, because you are not free to deviate from the plan. Now you know what you have to do. And of course the alternative is, there's no reason, and either way, let's just have fun, let's just enjoy ourselves. That's what the song, that's basically the case that the song argues. So anyway, as always happens, there was the actual making the video prompted me to have all sorts of thoughts that I hadn't had before. And I was also helped a lot by an exchange I had with one of my former students. You can read his comments on the first video and my replies. And I started thinking of all sorts of ways in which you could try to dodge the dilemma. So this video is really about 3 of those ways. I've actually mentioned one, but I'll get back to it. The first way, I don't want to cause a massive outrage, is Satanism. The first contact I had with Satanism was when someone came to me wanting to be a student of the Pathway School of Philosophy and saying that he was a student of the... No, he wasn't a student, he was a priest of the Temple of Set. I had no idea what this meant, so I looked it up on the internet, and of course I came across a Satanist website. And it was just the way you expect a website to be, promoting some cause or interest or religion, saying how wonderful it was to be a Satanist and all the advantages of Satanism and how Satanists have been totally misunderstood. But what I grasped from reading this website was that the main selling point of the Satanist religion is that their God is a finite God, not an infinite God. The Satanist God is not all-powerful. He's just much, much more powerful than human beings. A God that is just much more powerful than human beings is a kind of inspiration for humans to strive. he doesn't have the final answer. It's not all up to him. It's up to us. And although it didn't say this, I mean, there are all sorts of consequences that follow from this. A God that is not all-powerful can be killed, can be deposed, can be replaced by another God, one you like better. And of course, all the arguments that the children of Israel gave against the prophets of Baal and all these other religions are valid. There's a deep problem with the idea of a finite deity. But then again, originally, the God that led the children of Israel out of Egypt was not described in sort of theological terms as infinitely powerful. He was just the one God, the one who was more powerful than everyone else. No one had really thought of the implications of infinity or of limits. But certainly that's one possible way out. I mean, the movie The Nines actually gives a version of this. I don't want to spoil it for those who haven't seen it, because it's a fantastic movie. I love it. You can watch it and rewatch it and get more details from it, and all sorts of things to think about from a philosophical point of view. It's basically the idea that, yes, the universe has a purpose, that our world has a purpose, somebody is responsible for it, and maybe we are powerless to kind of do anything about it because they can destroy us in a whim, but they aren't responsible. They're not responsible for the whole of existence. They've just created our little world. That's not the end of it. That's not the end of the story. Maybe we can become more powerful. Maybe we can make worlds of our own. And that's attractive. And I'm not going to say absolutely, definitely, and for sure that it resolves or doesn't resolve the dilemma that I posed. I think it is basically unsatisfactory, because a being that's just very powerful is just more of the same. I mean, human beings are quite powerful. They're much more powerful than they were in the Stone Age. But finite power isn't enough. Finite power doesn't go anywhere close to ultimate reality, or why there's a universe at all. So it's really like embracing the second horn of the dilemma. It's really like saying, no, meaning is ultimately up to us. And even if somebody else created this wonderful building for us to live in, we can still smash it down. We can still replace it with something else. It's up to us. It's human freedom. So that's the first, and I'm calling it Satanism, even though a lot of people looking at this video will have all sorts of other associations with it. I have no deep knowledge of, and I'm sure I'll probably get comments from actual Satanists saying how wrong I am, etc. But this is just a philosophical position rather than an actual cult. And I'm sure there are all sorts of, different Satanist, versions, just as there are different versions of the Christian religion, etc. So the second alternative would be this. Why am I dissatisfied at the idea that there's a God who created everything and who has a purpose in doing so, and has a plan for man, has a plan for me, and I can't argue with it? Well, because I want to be able to argue with it. I don't like the idea of someone being totally powerful. And if the alternative is, well, I'm just a part, just a bit of the fabric of the universe, and I have no more power than anything else, and that's also unacceptable, well then I must be God. That's the only thing that would satisfy me. If I was God, then I have deep, deep hidden resources. I mean, I made all this, Okay, I feel myself to be limited in so many ways. I'm so fallible, I'm so limited in power, but obviously, if I made all this, then I must have some really amazing deep resources, and that's, of course, the theory of solipsism. You're all characters in the story of my world. I've talked quite a bit about solipsism in my book, Metaphysics, and elsewhere. It's a metaphysical theory. And as a metaphysical theory, it has one very serious flaw, which is that if you are God, or if you think of yourself as the God of your reality, then there is absolutely no reality check on what you believe. There really is no difference between being the God of an actual reality, making a world to live in, and simply dreaming a world, making things up as you go along. In a dream you can do anything you like. In a dream you have unlimited powers. In a dream you can change the past. You can make anything that was true false and anything that was false true. And that's not being in a world at all. That's not existing at all in any meaningful sense. So that's really the fatal flaw of solipsism, that you have no concept of truth. You might say, oh well, I can get by with not having a concept of truth. I don't need it. I'm happy to live in my own dream. But you can't really be happy to live in your own dream. Because all the things that make us happy, that satisfy us, that reward us, that give us pleasure, do so because we believe that they are real. And even in a dream, if you're enjoying your dream, you're kind of pretending that it's real. But if it isn't real, if it's just your invention, then the whole thing collapses. So, solipsism isn't going to be the thing that saves us. And the third alternative, which I've already mentioned, is nihilism. It doesn't matter if nothing has any ultimate reason or purpose or value. Let's just enjoy ourselves, let's just have fun. And there is a sense in which, if you are a true hedonist, if you really, really enjoy yourself, you like to have fun, do all sorts of things that give you pleasure, you're not really a nihilist, because those things, the things that give you pleasure, are, at the moment that the pleasure comes to you, they're real. The problem is that pleasures pass. Once you've had your pleasure, the only pleasure that remains is, like a nice memory of what happened. So you have to have more pleasure. And the metaphysician F.H. Bradley, in his ethical studies, characterizes pleasures as what he calls perishing particulars. You can never have enough. And actually Plato gives a similar argument in his dialogue Gorgias, where Gorgias, or his student, I can't remember who, actually makes the claim that the only purpose of life is to have as much pleasure as possible. You end up no different from one of these animals that just eats and eats and eats and shits, and that's it. That's the whole meaning of your life. And well, some people say, I wouldn't mind that. I don't mind just, if I had access to enough, if I had enough money, I could just have one pleasure after another. But maybe you'd actually start getting bored with it. I mean, that's one of the things about pleasure. You have to have continually new things. So, as a solution to the dilemma, I don't think that hedonism or nihilism, or some combination of the two, works. There's got to be something other than just pleasure, something that has a capacity to last, which is meaning or purpose. And the dilemma remains. Either the meaning or purpose is given by some higher entity, some infinite being, in which case there's no arguing with it, or all meaning and purpose is ultimately our own invention. And that's a terrifying alternative. And that's why I call it a dilemma. I mean, the arguments I've given are not logical arguments. There'll be people who are very happy to embrace the idea of an infinite being who's looking after everything. There'll be people who are very happy to be existentialists and say, no, I just make my own values and that's okay for me. But I am dissatisfied with both, and I believe that if you really look at the consequences, you may find that you are dissatisfied too. That's all for today.